In our last Invincible video, we talked about each superhero, and that involved shedding some light on how their powers work. But to avoid spoilers, we kept it limited to what we had seen in the show. For today's video, we will be discussing their powers more in depth, using relevant information from the comics. While we won't be bringing up precise plot points of when and where and why certain powers are used in certain ways, there may be information here that spoils future episodes in some way, so turn back now if you don't want that to happen. Now, some of this information may be different than how it pans out in the show, as we don't know just how faithful the show will be as it progresses, but it should be a good guideline of what to expect of our characters, or to find insight into other things that may have gone down in the history of this universe. Starting with Grayson, our Invincible hero, he is of course half Viltrumite. As a general rule, this should mean that he is somewhat weaker than full-blooded Viltrumites, but apparently, because human and Viltrumite bodies are so similar, he does have the potential to become just as strong as any full-blooded Viltrumite. This is helped by the actual genes that Viltrumites have being so powerful that they tend to make up the large majority of their offspring's genes when a child is conceived with another species, like Marcus. So he is closer to a full Viltrumite than his heritage suggests. He of course has super strength and super speed, and as his name suggests, one of his more interesting powers is his invulnerability. He apparently can survive some level of disembowelment, when his father barely survived the more blunt attacks from the Guardians of the Globe that didn't open any serious wounds on the outside. He apparently can barely even get hurt by nuclear weapons. Invincible can also fly, and while the show explains that this involves creating their own force to push off of, the comics indicate that it is a complex inner ear system balance that they get in their heads. Certain frequency pitches can disrupt this balance and knock a Viltrumite out of flight. Despite not seeming overly scholastic, Mark can also memorize mass amounts of data and implement them in a very short amount of time. This seems to be reserved mostly for superheroing as opposed to homework, though I imagine it does help. Finally, we have deaccelerated aging. Despite growing up relatively on par with humans so far, Viltrumites begin to slow down their aging process as they get older. The older a Viltrumite looks, the longer it takes for them to age, time moving slower and slower as they progress. As such, they stay healthy for long periods of time and can live to be thousands of years old. Considering that Nolan looks to be in his mid-40s, he could potentially be hundreds or even thousands of years old. As far as the Invincible Comics wiki says, there isn't any particular power that Omni-Man shows that Nolan wasn't implied to have either, so there isn't much to say about him, but with his experience, he probably is quite a bit more powerful than Invincible is as of yet. Moving on to currently prominent characters in the show, we have Adam Eve, who started on the teen team and became one of the members of the new Guardians of the Globe. While she may just seem like a Starfire ripoff with her laser beams, her power is actually subatomic manipulation, which means she rearranges atomic particles so that she can create essentially anything she wants out of any existing matter surrounding her. She seems to have a complex network in her head as she handles it with ease, instantly being able to balance out several different uses of her powers simultaneously, such as changing the air density around her for such smooth and controlled flight, while also being able to shoot her beams. It looks as if she simply thinks about what she wants, and the particles arrange for her without much thought, but it may just look easy after years of struggling and practice. Interestingly, when she manipulates atoms, any leftovers seem to be absorbed into her body and then passed later as human waste. Not sure why they made this part of the story, it seems unnecessary. Her powers can be used on herself as a sort of automatic function as well, for if she sustains any serious injuries, she will regenerate with ease without thinking about it. She seems to age normally, but when she passes away of old age, her body would immediately reboot itself by sending her back to her prime. Part of her powers are blocked by the US government with special inhibitors installed in her skull, but they can be overcome with enough emotional trauma, and she can even use her powers to erase memories when this happens. Adam Eve was of course dating Rex, who has an interesting amalgamation of powers from different sources. Rexplode had a chemical enhancement as an adolescent that gave him his general superhero abilities. Extra strength, extra durability, things that are further enhanced by his martial arts training and gymnastics. As for his iconic explosion powers and theme, that actually comes from a machine implanted in his arm that allows him to accelerate the molecules of inorganic matter. The size of the object he accelerates determines the size and power of the explosion, as does its chemical makeup. While his body as a whole is organic, apparently he can use his bones for this and create a catastrophic explosion that surpasses nuclear bombs. At least if he uses enough of them. On his team, we also have Dupli-Kate, who has the power to create clones of herself, all of whom seem to be the real her as she claims, but whose bodies are entirely expendable, implying a hive mind where all of the Kates experience each other's lives simultaneously, but still are able to focus on their individual task. It is unknown how many clones she can create, or if there is a threshold for how often she can do it. Her powers stem from a curse that started hundreds of years ago in China, with the intent being that her powers would cause so much stress for her parent that it would drive him mad. She ended up in foster care and later learned how to control her power and use it for good. The scientists who have studied her have no answers as to how her powers work. Joining the team when the teens become the Guardians of the Globe is Monster Girl. Her powers allow for her to transform into a giant troll-like monster at will, with enhanced strength, defense, and ability to heal. Each time she does this, she ages backwards, however, as her cells do not rearrange themselves correctly when she turns back into a girl. In one episode, she explained that her transformation made her age back a week. She seems to age correctly when moving forward in time, but if each transformation takes about a week off of her, then she would essentially stop aging if she transformed only once a week, and will continue to reverse in age anytime she has to transform more than once a week to save the day. This is why she can't do training sessions in her monster form. Like Dupli-Kate, Monster Girl's power comes from a curse, though it is from a magic-practicing grandmother of an ex-lover, as opposed to an ancient one passed through the family. Shrinking Ray has the power to shrink, of course, and I cannot find any information on whether or not this is science or magic, as she does not appear to be a prominent character in the comics. That being said, she was originally a male in the comics. Black Samson was an original member of the Guardians of the Globe who left shortly before Omni-Man slaughtered all of them because his powers had disappeared. He got a super suit made for him that emulated his powers, giving him super strength and durability, and used it to join the new Guardians of the Globe. The origin of his original powers is unknown. Rounding out the current main characters, we have Robot, but to explain his powers at all, there are some pretty explicit spoilers ahead, so turn back now if you don't want that. Robot is not actually a robot, but rather a super genius human whose body cannot be exposed to air, and as such has to use technology to experience the world as well as save it. The man behind the robot is able to control several drones that do his bidding all at once, and he is so intelligent that some people assume he is an artificial intelligence. That is the most prominent characters in the show explained, as well as their powers, but as time goes on, I'm sure we'll have other characters to talk about more in depth. Let me know of other cool hero powers I may have missed, but try to put spoiler warnings if you talk about big plot events in your comments. See you next time!